Hello YouTube. So today we're going to start wiring this Haltech Rebel. Now we don't have the injectors, so we can't do that part. But we don't have the intake air temperature sensor and some other things, but we'll do what we can. But the first thing, that hole needs to be at least 2 inches. It's only about 1.75. What do we got there? Not even 1.75. So we need to go out about 1/4 inch all the way around, roughly. I'm going to take this handy dandy die grinder with this carbide bit, and it'll make quick work of that. Once there's a hole already there, you can't really use a hole saw, which would have been great, but whatever. We'll just enlarge it. Little Harbor Freight die grinder with a carbide bit. Again, Harbor Freight said, "I got you." I know you're looking at it at an angle, but it's 2 inches. All right, stick the harness through. That didn't take me a couple of minutes. Old girl said, "Bam!" It's a hot one in here today. About 101. Yes, sir. I like it hot. I like it hot. I don't like it cold. I like it hot. All right, I'm too chunky to be laying in there trying to run that through there. And I already had this off because where we took all the ignition box and stuff and relays off, a bunch of stuff. When it was small block Chevy, I just took that off. I ran it through here. And then I'm going to run them one by one back through that hole until I get them all through there. I'm just starting with the really long ones first and just putting them through one at a time until I get them all through there. One at a time till we get there. Alright, I ran everything through and kind of separated everything so it's coming straight out like it should. And let's start hooking stuff up. So this said odd ignition, which is the odd number coil packs. That's the driver's side, 1357. So we're gonna, that one's definitely gonna go up that side. So we're going to throw it over there. This wiring harness is way too long. And then we'll just look at these and plug them in the way they go. I'm just trying to separate everything right now. Knock even. Those are going to go to the knock sensors, and there's with these Gen 3 knock sensors, Gen 4 knock sensors being right in the middle there. There's a special harness that goes from that to that. So we gotta go find that. What's this other one? Crank position sensor. So that one's gonna go down there. We're gonna hook that one up first. These wires are way too long. I don't know what we're gonna do about that. Later I'm gonna pop that grommet out and see if I can move that grommet around, because I'd rather have the extra wire inside the car than out. But anyway.
Crank position sensor is plugged in.
Then we got the Gen 3 knock sensor adapter harness we're going to put on. That goes from here to the knock sensor harness I've got laying up here. It goes up under the intake to the knock sensors. Alright, so the harness I laid over there, it's got a knock sensor odd, and this side over here has a knock sensor even. And then you plug it into this harness, the odd goes to the odd, and the even goes to the even. Then you plug that plug into your Gen 3 knock sensors. Alright, so I took the grommet out. If I took the grommet out, it lets me push those back in there. I'd rather have the extra back there, but There's the odd side, or odd side. There's the even side that come up here on the passenger side, because this is 2, 4, 6, 8. On that side, the cylinder is the driver's side. There's 1, 3, 5, 7. But now that knock sensor wire, it had knock even and knock odd coming out of the even and odd side. So the other one was so long, it was way up here. I could reach the fan with it. I looped it back around and connected it into the harness they give you. Knock odd, that goes around to the odd side, comes off that harness. And then knock even came off this side harness. And then you use the adapter wire, and then you plug it into the Gen 3 plug, and that goes under there under the intake and goes to the knock sensors. Then you got ignition even, I plugged that in. You got ignition odd, I plugged that one in. Can you see it? Oh, I gotta reach. Yep. And then out of the one that goes over to the odd side, there's the cam position sensor and the oil pressure sensor. And the oil pressure sensor was the 3-wire. And it had a 3-wire oil pressure sensor in it. And I plugged that in. I don't know if you can see that. Let me go. Yeah, there it is right there. So I plugged that in. Let's get on this side where we can see it better. See, it says oil pressure. And that one comes up this side. And then the cam sensor, it's really long because, you know, some of the newer motors, it goes up here. But I guess you got to repin it different for if it goes back there or if it goes up here. So we're going to have to figure that out, and we'll do that last. The next thing we're going to do is this one right here. It says injectors on it. I pushed it back through there because there's another one just like this that says something else on it. We'll look at that in a minute. But see, that one says injector. So I got the EV1 harness because it didn't really matter what harness I had to get adapters because I'm running the Bosch Delphi plug-in sensors. But we're going to plug that right there, and then they're numbered. Injector 8, injector 6. So this would go on the even side, which is this side, passenger side. 2, 4, 6, 8. And the other one is going to go to the driver's side, and they'll be numbered 1, 3, 5, 7. Oh, I got 3 ones up there. And those go to the driver's side. 1, 3, 5, 7 go to the driver's side. So we'll plug that in. And since I don't have the fuel rail or the injectors in, we're just going to lay it up there. But just remember, this side's 2, 4, 6, 8. It's the passenger side. Driver's side, 1, 3, 5, 7. And that plug-in, I only plug in one way. And then, you know, here you got 2. That one says 4. And then 6, 8. And the other one, it would go to this side and say 1, 3, 5, 7. On back, 1, 3, 5, 7. You just plug those in. If yours is EV1, you got the EV harness, you just plug them right in. If your injectors are in, but mine aren't, so we'll do that later. But that's pretty self-explanatory. So I need to get some bolts for my coils. I didn't have any. I might have some over there. I'll have to check my little yellow bins. All right, then we got our cable, throttle, and IC harness, idle air control. And it looks just like our injector harness. Remember I said there was another plug-in on the other side that looked like this? There it is. You plug this one right into there. It'll only plug in one way, the grooves. Then you got, it comes out of that, and it's got throttle position sensor. That's your throttle position sensor. That goes up there. And this is your idle air control. It goes right here. So those are plugged up. Now we're going to have to get a sensor. I didn't even think about that. But there's a engine coolant temp sensor that goes there. This is the alternator, and we're putting the alternator on the other side, so we can probably run that through there. And then coolant temp. So typically there's a coolant temp sensor right here, and that's where that would plug in at. And this that comes out of this even horn or odd harness. We're on the odd side, driver's side. This one right here is your intake air temperature sensor. That would go in your intake stream. You'll have a sensor in your intake air temperature, which we got to put that on when we do the turbo and stuff, but that's where that one's going to plug in at. So also in your kit you'll get this sensor pack, which you got your wideband O2 sensor. It's got a bung for it.
You'll also have some connectors for your inputs and outputs for, like, if you want to do traction control, flex fuel sensor, shifter, etc.
This is the one that'll hook to, and the wideband O2 sensor. You gotta weld the bung into the exhaust somewhere, and then this sensor will screw into that bung. We can get her out here. See, and then that plugs in, and that screws into one of those bungs. You'll notice there's an intake air temperature sensor also on a bung, in case you need to weld it in one of your pipes for like boosted applications. And that's that wire, that IAT wire we talked about that was over here, intake air temperature sensor. But yeah, I don't know where but yeah, there's the sensor, and this is the wideband O2 sensor. And then that goes in your exhaust. You probably have to weld one of those bungs on there. One of these bungs is steel and one's aluminum, because usually the intake air temperature is welded into an aluminum pipe and the steel one into the steel pipe. And the intake air temperature is going to go into the aluminum one, and that usually, especially on turbo applications, is welded into the aluminum piping of the intake air temperature, or right before the throttle body in the piping. So you'll have your piping right here. You weld a bung in there somewhere, and that intake air temperature sensor goes in there, and you plug it right into here. Alright, so this one says fuel pressure, and this one we're going to, when I put that plate back in there, we're going to mount the regulator there, and the regulator has an 1/8 inch MPT port on the front of it. So we'll get a sensor with 3 plugs that'll go up to at least 100 psi, or probably 80. Yeah, 80 psi, wherever we can find that'll hook to this. And then we can stick in the regulator where we're going to mount the regulator right there, but that's where that's going to plug in, and it'll let the system know what your fuel pressure is. We'll set that over there because we can't hook that up just yet. We'll do that once we get our regulator. Then we got one more. It says fan. And that one goes to your fan. Your fans, this supplies the hot. So you ground your fans. I think, yeah, Chris has his grounded right there. And, you know, we got the fender grounded to the frame and to the motor and all that. We come off the back of the head and go up here, and then it goes down to the frame, and the motor goes from the frame to the motor there, and then we come up from the firewall down here to the frame and up to the fender with some wires to ground, make sure the firewall and the fenders and everything are grounded out. But this is the hot for the fans that we just looked at, and here's his 2 hot wires for the fans. So we're going to splice into those and wire those up. I'm actually going to wire that up after I put that shield back in there, because a bunch of wires over here, it's hard to get that shield in and out. We just know that those go to the hot side of the fan, and then you ground the fan. The ground side of the fan, you just ground wherever. All right, let's go back to the cam sensor. There is different wirings for different types of cam sensors, apparently. Which doesn't really make a lot of sense, because it says sensor. I don't know, man. Sensor. I guess we'll put the yellow in A and the red in C and see what happens. I'm gonna go off this, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I'm assuming it's the LS1 type cam sensor. I don't know. We're gonna go with this. We'll see what happens. And if you look at this closely, it'll say A, B, C. We're gonna put yellow in A and red in C. And we're going to plug it in way back yonder, right beside the oil pressure sensor, right there. If y'all never dealt with these, you just push them in the hole. You see that little clip on the back? To the right. You gotta look which way they go in too. So the hole should go down that way, so this one will go in just like that, and that little clip in the back, where'd it go? There's a little clip that'll catch it, so once you push it all the way in, you can't pull it out. And then, yeah, it's on the side there. Let's see if you can see that. That clip right by my thumb. It clips up in there, but you gotta look which way they go in. See, like the hole is more towards the back, and the ramp thing's in the front, so it would go like that. Alright, we'll put yellow in A. Alright, and if you try to push it up in there and it ain't going up in there, you've got it upside down or left or right or something. Anyway, A yellow, red C. That's what we're going to try anyway. I don't really know. Alright, there we go. Plugged in. So right there. Right behind the oil pressure sensor. Alright, on each side of the injector harness, there's a ground. It says cylinder head ground. So we're going to ground those right there. The alternator will probably go on this side, so it might go into one of the front alternator bolts, as long as it clears the fan. But you ground those to the head. You can ground them to the back of the head too if you want. We might do that. But there's one on this side, and there's one on this side. Both sides. You can put them on the front or the back of the head. When you ground those, make sure the surface of your head is nice and clean. And last but not least, we got our AX25. This is what's going to control our trans brake. I got some trans brake wires, and everything that comes out of the Rebel is hot. So the other side, you just ground, and that wire's way down there. Ugh, I can't reach it. Oh, here we go. Alright. So, trans brake solenoid, it don't matter which one's hot and which one's ground. So we'll ground one of these probably to the back of the head, and then the other one we're going to run to this aux 25. And there's one more plug-in we didn't use, which is this transmission one. And apparently the transmission breakout connector is for a T56. What it says. Transmission sub harness. T56 transmission sub harness. Let's see. Transmission breakout connector. The breakout connector for a transmission sub harness can be utilized for added functionality. The list of available sub harnesses can be found on page 3, and that's the page we was on. Page 3, and that's all it says. But to hook the injectors up, We need to get the fuel rails in. I need to get a coolant temp sensor and the intake air temperature sensor. We need to get that hooked up. And once we get the alternator on, there's many different harnesses for different types of alternators that you may or may not use. There's the T56 transmission. That's what that would plug to, but we don't. That one I was showing you coming out of the firewall. But we got to get a coolant temp sensor, plug that in. Intake air temp sensor, we got to get the turbo ran and get the bung in for that and get that in. The alternator we need to get on, and then whichever one of these we're using, we'll plug that into the harness on the driver's side, and then plug it into the to the alternator, whichever one of these we need, which is more likely going to be this one right here. And then we got the wideband sensor, we got the fan, we got the trans brake. We're going to wire all those up tomorrow probably, and then we'll get in the car, we'll mount the Rebel, and we'll start doing that wiring. Alright, I went and got a coolant temperature sensor, plug that in, and we got the alternator mounted. So this is our alternator wire. That's going to go right to there. And then there's an exciter wire for this 4-prong deal. And there's like 4 alternator harnesses. And this one's the 4-pin, just like you just seen. 4-pin. So also, I didn't know if I mentioned this before, and each one, you got your main instructions that are on the outside of the bag. And then you got instructions inside of these also that, from what I gather, pretty much say the same thing. Alright, and so here's what we're dealing with. It says 99 to 00. Truck, 99 to 02, and then 98 F body. Those are all the same. C6 Corvette, 01 truck, C5. I know that's the alternator that we're using right there. So the exciter is going to use pin B, and then the pink and brown, it's not used. Insulate the wire and hold it back. So we're going to put the exciter wire, the solid pink one, in pin B of this connector. Same way we did the cam sensor. We just find pin B. There it is. We tried to hide us on them. So this one right here, pin B. We're going to put it in that one. Pin B. And you'll see the groove and the clip on these, they'll only go in one way. So that little slit right there by my thumb, it'll only let it go in one way. So if you don't put it in right, it'll tell you. So we need the pink one. There's the pink with the brown wire. We're not going to use that. We're going to use this solid pink one and pin B. Alright, just slide it through. It'll lock in place. There we go. Pin B. Solid pink wire. We're just going to cut this one back. We're not going to use it. Alright, I pulled this mesh back. You can move this rubber piece around. Anyway, I pulled it back. I cut that wire way down in here. Now we'll, I don't think this is going to reach though, that's the problem. Now we got to find the alternator wire over here. There it is, alternator. We'll plug that in and hope it'll reach. If it don't, we're going to have to lengthen it, unfortunately. Just trying to move some wires around so we can get it to reach. Oh, look at there. It did reach. That'll work. It's out of the way of anything. We're going to have to find a way to route this. But that's going to go right there. Now that goes to the starter. The battery, the positive battery, goes to the starter. And then I ran everything that goes into the dash that controls the lights and everything. I ran to the starter. The exciter wire we got run to the starter, and then yeah, that goes back to the battery, and then the ground of the battery grounds on the frame, and there all the grounds come off it. All your grounds got to make it back to the battery somehow, some way. And I did put that ground wire on right there. Plus solid motor mounts. I didn't even think of that. They're solid motor mounts, so it grounds through those. I'm gonna put some wire loom on it, but I wound up running the alternator wire under the motor mount, up through there, up behind that, because the headers are going to go forward, so gotta have that out of the way. And I bolted it down. Alright, we got the one for the fan wired to the fans, the hot side. Everything that comes out of this Rebel's the hot. It controls the hot. It don't control through ground like most other, like a stock ECM seems to do. But anyway, we got the one for the trans brake. I just grounded the trans brake up here. That also goes to the back of the head, and that also goes down to the frame where the battery cable actually connects to. So all we have left up here is fuel pressure and wideband, and then our air temperature, air intake temperatures. And then once we get the fuel rail on, we'll put our injector adapters on there, going from EV1 to the Delphi plug or whatever it was. I don't know. And the engine will be done. Now we got to do inside the car. All right, mounting the Haltech Rebel and run the wires in the dash. So we mounted it right there, right where we had the 6AL2 programmable when we was running the small block Chevy. And here's all them extra cords I pulled from the motor. There's where our fuel pump goes down. And I took the back seat out and the front seat out just so I could reach everything better. Pop that out and take it all the way out. But yeah, we'll go ahead and plug these in first. These two right here. Now they're notched on the bottom. See how that one only has one notch on the bottom and two at the top. See, they only plug in one way. See, and this one goes in the other one. It's notched twice on the bottom, so that one will go in that one. All right, that one's in. They clip right here at the top. There's a little clip right there. That's where they clip at. And one more that goes right there. That one's pretty self-explanatory. It's the only one that'll plug in there. Now, let's run some hot and ground wires. I just wanted to, we'll get up there and clean all that up. Oh, there's wires everywhere. I probably should have cut those to fit, but whatever. All right, so from Battery Cable USA, we ordered some 12 feet 4-gauge wire. It's supposed to be 4-gauge wire. And now the longer your wire is, the bigger it needs to be. I figured that out. It doesn't say anything in the instructions about how long it needs to be before it's a bigger wire, but anyway, we ran that back there and we ran it to the battery in the trunk. And we also ran our fuel pump to our fuel pump. That's where our fuel pump goes down. We ran that to our fuel pump, and then the negative wire for the fuel pump. Again, these all come off the Rebel as hot, so the negative just goes straight up to the battery. We probably could have ground that to the frame or somewhere else, but we ran it to the battery. Now I can put the seats and everything back in. Probably vacuum this thing out. It's gotten dirty over the years. But now another wire we got coming out of our input and output connectors. Output, inputs. This is where you hook up an ethanol sensor, a trans brake, a trans bump, your shifter, traction control, etc. And in with the wideband sensor and stuff like that is the connector and some pins for this. You just gotta figure out which ones you're going to use. And as of right now, we're just going to use the trans brake and the trans brake bump. I'm going to do another video on how to hook that up. But one of these wires coming out of this is the ignition switch. So this one has to have key on power only. If it's not key on power, you go to shut your car off and it'll keep running. But it's got to be key on power, and it's also got to maintain power as the motor's turning. And the perfect wire for that is the wire that originally ran to our HEI distributor, which I've left out right here. So I'm going to run that through the through here as well, and we're going to connect those two together. This was the one for our HEI distributor when it was small block Chevy. That's going to be our ignition source. All right, there we go. We got that hooked up. That's just one of those solder heat connectors. You just heat it up and it solders and connects everything all for you. Now we'll put some wire loom on that, and that's where that's going to go, right through the firewall. We're also going to run the vacuum boost pressure through there. I don't know if you're supposed to use vacuum boost or just boost pressure, but we'll figure that out. But that's going to go through there as well. But as far as the wiring goes, I got to be able to put the fuel rails on so we can get fuel pressure, and hook the injectors up and hook the O2 sensor up, and then plug in the fuel pressure sensor, which we're going to mount the regulator over here. It'll come right out of the regulator and it should start. Now whether it starts or not, I don't know, and y'all have to stay tuned because there's a bunch of other stuff I got to do before we can get to that point. But if y'all see anything I missed or said wrong, just hit the comments. It's pretty easy. Everything's labeled. It's just a little time consuming. Alright, a little update before I end this video. We got our fuel pressure regulator mounted, and we got our fuel pressure sensor. Had to buy that separate. And there we go. Fuel pressure. We got that one plugged in. And we're on the fuel rails. This is the feed. We had the regulator here before on the small block Chevy. And then we had the feed and the return on the regulator, and then two just went over to the carburetor. But on this, so I didn't have to redo any of this, I got a Y, a 10 to 8, and we ran 8 to the back of the fuel rails. Then it comes up the fuel rails, then it comes out each side of the fuel rail and around and to each side of the regulator. Then it'll return out the bottom. But I need the fitting that goes from that to this return, which is a 10AN. I ordered one, but they sent me the wrong fitting. They sent me I need a 6 orb to a 10AN, and they sent me a 10AN orb to a 6AN. But anyway, but that's where we're at now. The only thing left to do is these injectors are the LS3 height. They're smaller than the truck injector, so I had to buy some $15 spacer adapters, so it'd make those injectors a little bit longer. And then we can use our EV1 to Denso Delphi adapters for these plugins for those injectors. They're the 210 pound Bosch, and they didn't make a sub harness for these injectors, so I got the EV1 sub harness, and then I got these injector adapters, so they'll plug into here, then plug into there. And again, they're numbered 2, 4, 2, 4, 6, 8. Then on that side, front to back, 1, 3, 5, 7. And then we're going to get, after we put the turbo on and everything, we're going to weld this aluminum bung into the piping. We're going to use this air intake temperature sensor that comes in the kit. We'll screw it in, and then we'll plug this air temp plug-in in for that one. And then we'll use this metal bung on the exhaust somewhere and put this wideband sensor in. And then we'll use this plug in for the wideband sensor. And that's pretty much it. We've got everything plugged in. We're going to need a throttle cable, and then we'll need to do the trans brake and the bump. But yeah, thought I'd add that to the end of this video just to show y'all where we're at.